Quite amazing sentence, I think. Last night, MPs backed a smoking ban for anyone born after the year 2009. All of our county's MPs supported it, except for Andrew Lewer from Northampton South, who voted against. Andrea Leadsom is a health minister, as well as being the MP for South Northamptonshire, and she supported it.
I know that honourable members who oppose this bill are doing so with the best of intentions. They argue that adults should be free to make their own decisions, and I get that. But what we're inviting, what we're urging them to do is to make their own free decision to choose to be addicted to nicotine. But that is not a choice.
Now, Conservative, and there are quite a few of them, Conservative critics, including the former Cabinet Minister, Sir Simon Clarke, were not convinced.
It is absolutely crystal clear that smoking damages your health, it damages your wealth. It is an antisocial habit in so many ways. But, and it is a big but, I don't believe it's my right to tell my fellow citizens that they can't do it.
Now, if you look in the newspapers this morning, so the Daily Mirror says cig-free generation, says Britain now faces this smoke-free future after MPs voted for what is, well, in effect, a ban on smoking for today's youngsters. The bill passed its second reading comfortably, thanks to support from opposition MPs. Labour's shadow health minister, Preet Gill, accused the Conservatives to being too close to big tobacco.
Every year, the NHS bails out big tobacco to the tune of billions. The Prime Minister might not feel he has the strength to take on these vested interests and whip his MPs to vote against them, but he can rest assured that if they can't get it over the line, Labour will.
Yeah. Now, since it was banned indoors in public places, smoking rates have declined nationally. But in some places, actually, it does remain stubbornly common. Places like Corby, we're going to hear from there a little later. But this proposed law also includes tighter restrictions on the packaging and flavouring of vapes to make them less appealing to children. Trading standards officers will be able to give £100 on-the-spot fines to any retailer found selling them to children too. Let's have a chat to someone who works in this area. Ryan Mitchlig is from Right Vape, which is on Kingsley Park Terrace in Northampton. He's with me in the studio. Morning.
Morning, Annabel. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about Right Vape then, because we see quite a few vape shops around.
Yes.
How does yours work?
So we are in Kingsley in Northampton. We've been there for 7 years now. And we very much are part of the community. We only sell vaping products, but we specialise in products that are suitable for stopping smoking. So none of those big cloud things that you see, and we predominantly don't sell disposables. We have one or two to get people into conversation, which we'll use to then switch them onto a reusable model. Because our ethos has always been about safe vaping products in the right hands. So those that do smoke, that want to stop, and, you know, trying to be as kind as we can to the planet by not throwing things away after a single use as well. Obviously, we've always been very, in our industry, what I believed, we were always very conscious of selling to those that are over 18. When I started the industry 10 years ago, there was no rule on that.
But there was nothing?
No, you didn't actually, it wasn't actually a law. So, wow. But we always had a kind of code of conduct that we followed, and we would never sell to anybody under the age of 18. So I think our industry did a good job at doing that itself, but unfortunately, as these products have become popularised, you've seen every man and his dog selling them, and this is where we've had the issue with children vaping as well.
So your clientele are generally people who've come in, they're trying to give up smoking and they're using vaping as a way of doing that?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, 100%. We have seen, since COVID and since the rise of disposables, we have seen an increase of people that have picked up vaping. I used to follow that quite heavily really over the years, and we have seen in the last 2 years that has propelled. So we have seen more adult smokers coming in the door that have not smoked previously. It's still a very small amount, but it is to be concerned. So overall, when they said the ban was coming, I mean, that's something I campaigned for from day one. So I was very happy about the ban on disposable products, because we were seeing, you know, access to a lot more people using them that shouldn't have been, essentially.
So the headlines that are coming out of this debate from last night are generally about the smoking and the fact that, you know, people born after 2009 won't be able to buy cigarettes. But there is a fair bit on vaping as well. And you've been watching this debate, have you? You've been following this argument.
Yeah, and actually this bill does sort of kind of represent both ends. It represents combustible tobacco and vaping, but primarily today what we're talking about is the tobacco ban. Personally, I think I'm not for that style of policy, if you like. It's a very bold policy. The problem is, Dr. Khan, this is all come from the Khan review from about 2 years ago, and the Conservatives did nothing with that. It's been sat on people's desks for 2 years, and there really wasn't, much interest in smoking, in my opinion. I don't think this government did enough to move towards the target of being smoke-free by 2030. I think it's just, as we've come up to, proposed in an election year, all of these things have been brought out.
So you're quite
now.
Cynical about the fact that it's been brought out now.
I'm not naturally that way. I'm all for government, I'm all for policy. This is not my favourite government, I wouldn't vote for them, but I'm all for having a government and having power. I do agree with policymakers, and we have to try and put things in to make change. But we have been asking for tighter restrictions for years, and they've been ignored.
So if you're not that keen on this aspect of the smoking, side of things, what about vaping? What changes are they going to be bringing in?
Well, there's been a lot, and I do agree we need tighter regulation. We had regulation anyway in 2016, but it hasn't been enforced, and that's been the problem. So this government has, eroded public service, and we haven't had, the services to back up the legislations that are already in place. So we had the rise of illegal disposables, which have been a huge problem, and we haven't currently got the resources to manage that, and they are already a problem. So I hope we're going to have a ban next year. They haven't actually finalised the date. They have in Scotland, it's going to be April 2025. In the UK, we haven't had that date yet. It's still in consultation. But what worries me is if we haven't been able to enforce it so far, how are we going to enforce it after that? I 100% agree that we need to remove tobacco products, from popular culture. I don't know if banning is the way to do it, but what we can do is offer safer alternatives and education, and I think that would be a better way. But it's passed now, so it's going to happen.
And they are changing some of the rules around vaping, as in the packaging and the flavours, aren't they? There's a proposal for that.
Yes, it's in consultation, so there is a proposal.
You'd agree with that?
If you can't regulate things and make it clear, I would agree. I think it's such a complex subject, and we need to talk about it over a longer period. What they tend to do is put these changes in. We've had years of nothing, and they haven't regulated, they haven't managed, and then all out of the blue, they've basically put a lot of legislation in place overnight with really little consultation. So I do agree that limiting flavour and packaging to children is correct. But what I also think is that we could have managed this in a different way. We could have had more trading standards on the ground. We could have, we didn't ever, border force. How are these products coming into the country in the first place? Because unfortunately, whilst we're going to protect people that, potentially don't vape or smoke, and that's a good thing, we should have always had that protection. What we might do is hinder people that do smoke and want to use these products. And the messaging now is never been worse about how there's so much misinformation out there. And what we do know is vaping done correctly is the most effective tool we've got currently. If you want to vape, some people don't want to go down that route. And what I worry is that, the misinformation is just not clear.
And can I just ask you before you go, what your background, so before this, because you've obviously been doing the vape shop just for a few years.
Yes.
So you were a smoker, were you?
I was a smoker.
Okay,
yeah.
And you're not a smoker anymore?
Not anymore, I haven't smoked for 10 years.
Right,
So
and you used vaping to get off smoking?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't actually class myself as a heavy vaper. I do vape every day currently. And I was saying to one of my customers the other day, probably if I didn't have my shop, I probably would have stopped vaping by now. We have a lot of people walking past our window now, waving and coming to say hello because they don't vape anymore.
Right.
And we get really friendly with them. We're like, hi, and they're like, I just wanted to say hi, and I don't vape anymore, and that's lovely. So we do help many people to stop vaping.
And you want to stop vaping, do you?
I think realistically for me, because I'm around it every day, I'm always having to try products to make sure that they're suitable for my clients. I've always got a foot in the door, but if I didn't have that shop tomorrow, I would stop vaping, yeah.
Okay, Ryan, really interesting. Thanks ever so much for coming in. Nice to see you in person as well. Ryan Mitchell, then from Right Vape on Kingsley Park Terrace in Northampton, and we've got a few messages actually coming from people in about this, so we'll continue to chat. Right, let's